Hello, welcome back to another day of walking about. It's about 2 p.m. Kind of started late, oh well. So right now we're in a remnant eastern hemlock forest along the coast of southeast Connecticut. We're near the coast, about like 10 miles inland, and you can see that all the hemlocks have their growth only towards the very top. And there's very few hemlock saplings, and the ones that are here are mostly small and shrimpy and don't have a lot of foliage. And that is due to the hemlock woolly adelgid, which basically sucks the life out of them. I've explained it in other videos of how the ones in the shade just can't take that life sucking because they don't get a lot of nutrients or sunlight energy in the first place, so they end up dying. That's why the ones with the foliage up top end up surviving, because they can just get enough energy by being towards the top of the canopy. But right now I'm walking into a north-facing ravine. We got polystichum, or Christmas fern here, an evergreen fern. That's the sori there. They only have the sori towards the top. And then there's also Dryopteris marginalis, or the intermediate, I don't know. I know it's Dryopteris marginalis. Marginal wood fern. We got some American beeches, Fagus grandifolia, I think. We got some Betulenta black birch here and there. Red oaks. Your typical kind of New England forest. We got this nice valley. Then we have this big swamp here. Very acidic swamp. Some nice big red oaks too. I'll let you know if I find anything cool. Look, it's that witch's butter fungus thing. Interesting. Along this creek we have Briar Andersonia elisabara, or the spoon-leaved moss. A little bit of Thudium delicatum too. Yerbia divaritica right here, or white wood aster, one of the most common asters. There's its basal rosette. And there's all the different Thudium and Briar Andersonia. And look, we got a weird little, probably a hypnum moss here. Right here we have an atrichum moss. I don't know the exact species, but it's an atrichum. We have Calicladium impotens. That's what this is, and you always find them mixed in with the Thudium delicatum right here. This is Pseudomogedon, or the tree skirt moss, growing up on this rock here. You typically find it more on the bases of trees, but I guess here it's able to grow on these rocks. And then we have your ever-present, annoying Oriental bittersweet, the Celestris orbicalis. I hate this plant. Invasive as hell. This humongous mushroom is Gandoderma tsugiae, or the hemlock tarnish shelf, and it grows on hemlocks, especially dying or dead ones, and that's the kind of forest we're in. A dying and kind of dead hemlock forest. This one was probably peeled off an old hemlock log, but I've seen these even bigger, like twice the size of that. These are beautiful mushrooms. They typically come out during hot summer days, like in July or August. I've seen a couple in September too. We also have Pyrola americana, as well as the Monotropa uniflora. And there's the floret, I don't know, the old flower thing, the stalk from Pyrola. It's a little blueberry family plant. Blooms in summer. Here we have stupid burning bush, Euonymus elatus, another horrible invasive. This one I picked. It won't grow because I picked it. It definitely won't reroot either because not enough of the roots touching the soil. But it's another very common invasive plant. We got Fruliana arborescensis, or New York scalewort. Well, I know it's a Fruliana. Very small, tinged red on this fallen black birch. And then we have this mystery fungi here, which I'm going to ID and tell you what it is. Called Plecatoropsis crispa, or the crimped gill. And they call it the crimped gill because I guess the grills, they look crimped. Let me see if I can get a good one without smashing it. Look at that, all crimped up. Very interesting. We have a cute little liverwort called Plagiominium. Plagiominium? I don't know. It's one of those Plagiominiums. I don't know the exact species because you need to go in there and cut the cells apart and count how many cells or the shape of them or whatever. But it's definitely a Plagiominium. There you go, and you can see all its little sories on there, or spore stalks. And then you got your ever common, ever present Thudium delicatum and your Calicladium imponens. But look how beautiful, little rosettes. Very nice. Here we have Epiphagus virginiana, or the beech drops, parasitic on beech trees, like this one here. And it blooms in the fall. It kind of looks like an orchid, but it's not. It's an Orobancaceae, the broom rape family. Fat vitus right here, or a native grape. Probably a gray bark grape. But there's like 3 or 4 different species, and you need the flowers or leaves to tell the difference between them, and currently I just have the bark. Until I realize what each bark looks like, I'm just going to call it in the genus Vitis. The ever-present and ever-invasive Berberis thunbergii. Look at that. I hate this plant so much. Fucking invasive from fucking Home Depot. I have Carpinus carolinea, or the American hornbeam, aka musclewoods, because its bark is, oh look, a moth. What the heck? I guess I just crushed this little moth by fondling this, wow, I'm sorry. Damn. That's too bad. Well, you can take pictures of him now and figure out what he is. As in the Emnoname, E-N-N monome, and Emnoname, whatever it is, but it's a subfamily in the geometer moths, so it's a geometer. Sorry. Oh, she's got the stick. Oh, you got the stick. You pissed. Come here. Oh, you're gonna break it. Look at her go. Pachella repens, an evergreen deep shade ground cover in the coffee family. Climacium americana, I think that's the genus name, but it's American tree moss. Climacium. That's the genus, and more Briar Andersonia, and a tiny little bit of Thudium delicatum. Cinna. You know the cinema? No? Okay. But that's the basal rosette little cinna. It's likely the one that grows here. I can't remember the genus name, so I always call it cinna, and then the experts and I naturalists say, alright, that's a cinna, whatever it is. Here we got Pachyra aurea growing up here on this little seep. A little yellow dandelion looking sunflower family flowers in May and June. Beautiful. It grows quickly. It's a great garden plant. It can survive outside of this really crappy stuff. We got whitewood aster too. And it spreads like a wildfire. I planted one clump, all right? And that one clump seeded 20 plants the following year. And then of those 20 plants, I probably had 10 or 11 flowering stalks. So this thing spreads like crazy. I can't wait to see it come up. I've taken a bunch out, plant them all at my other clients. They're fantastic plants. Spreading by rhizome and by seed. Love them. Massive tulipifera, Lariodendron tulipifera. Not tulipifera, Lariodendron, but it's a big, giant, massive tree in the magnolia family. And it likes its really rich spots, and it only grows in open woods. So this is all peelings from this birch that's growing next to it. But if I look on the ground hard enough, I can actually find, right here, the seeds. So this will form a tree like this. This one's about 100 years old, maybe a little older. But it's a beauty. One of my favorite trees. And you know the area is super rich when it has one of these, because these are shallow rooted. And it needs deep soil. And it needs a lot of water. And a lot of my area doesn't really have that because it's thin granity land. And so you only really see these in the lowlands. Or on slopey lowlands. And like slopey lowlands, so basically before you reach the top of the mountain or whatever. And then here we got Rubus phoenicatus, or the wineberry. I think I said it right, phoenicatus. I've learned it. Invasive rubus, but the berries are fucking delicious. They're like the most sour, tart, sweet, like they're dummy good. A shelf fungus, a polypore, maybe genus Sterium, maybe genus Termites? I don't know. Termicites? I don't know. It's either Sterium or some other shelf fungi. It looks like this, and this tree fell over, and these were growing vertical. And when the tree fell, the fungi now came out horizontal. And you can see the change, so you can kind of guess, like, depending on the weather, like how long ago this tree fell. Like, maybe it fell in the last 10 weeks or something. I mean, you can tell by the amount of dirt on it, but it's hard to tell. You know, it's an old dead tree. It's been cut, probably fell at least this year. Maybe these fungi are super old. Who knows? But they're growing sideways now. Fresh oak fall. This one probably fell within the last 2 weeks. But hell, it could have even fallen last night. It's a red oak though. And it hasn't been trail maintenance yet. But, you know, that takes time. I think people come out in trails and clear them every 6 to 8 weeks or something. Or there's volunteers that do it. Here we either have Lobelia inflata or Lobelia spicata. Wow, the bladderpod lobelia, huh. Maybe it's that, but it's still green. It's still trying to flower and produce seed. You know, the frosts haven't killed it yet. Monotropa hypopodes. Sort of less common one than Monotropa uniflora, but I think with proficient rain, it's somewhat common. Like, I see it a lot of places I go. Hedwigia ciliata, one of my favorites. Absolutely glows on winter days right after the rain. Beautiful patch of Brio Andersonia. Ah, that thing is awesome. So I think these little nubbins are the new growth, and maybe these long ones are the old growth, or the edge of each one, because these are like terminal buds, and the little ones that grow off it are like they kind of branch like side to side like a fern does. I love them though. So bright. They're one of the brightest mosses in the woods, especially this time of year. Don't forget about the little fork moss right here, the little dicranum. I love dicranum. A beautiful little creek, or a seep, and it's a sedge meadow. All these are little clumps of sedges, little hummocks with the mosses and the sedges. And this is orchid habitat. A lot of good stuff grows in this area. Very diverse. One of the most diverse areas of the forest in general. But it's also one of the most sensitive, because the invasives love this area. And I hate it when she splashes. But anyways, that's why I don't take her out towards these areas, especially towards the spring. She's a wampler. But anyways, multiflora rose, highly invasive. We got a spice bush right there. And down that way, that little thicket of crap, that's all barberry. This is either an entirely different moss that's growing like with Climacium. It might just be young Climacium, but they're so different between young and old. Like, it could possibly be two different mosses, you know? Or this one could be younger, you know, that's why these are a little bit confusing, but I know there is Climacium in there. I just don't know this moss. And that moss just might be the Climacium. I would have to go back to this exact spot in the summer and just look at it to see if there's actually a different one. Carpus phaeotitis, a little skunk cabbage, poking his head up, getting ready to bloom soon. That'll open up in February. Oyster mushroom, or some sort of oyster mushroom, and we have a sluggy boy and his baby sluggy boys. Some sphagnum mixed with this dicranum. Some more there. And then these are rosettes of swamp aster. To abundant rainfall, old seeps are opening up, old little springs. And because we've had so much rain in the, like, really fast, like just big torrents opened up, pushed all the leaves out of the way and eroded it down a little. It's what happens to the trails as well. So in the spring, people don't have to do trail maintenance because it does it for itself, more or less. We're going to walk through some old pasture land. You can see the old farm walls that would keep animals in. So it's a second growth upland forest. Really wet because we just had like 7 inches of rain in the last week. So it's a little flooded. Just a tad. Pseudomogenon, and then we have a teeny tiny patch of Thelia hirtella growing up on this dying American beech. You can see it has all sorts of steriums up there with the oranges. I love it. Mossy trunks. I don't know what any of these 3 fungi are, but this is a guild one. This is on that dying beach. Looks like this. I'm going to post it to iNaturalist later. Then we have this weird little oyster here. This one here. Which I think it's an oyster. I picked one off. Where'd it go? Oh well, we'll just take another one. But you can see it's just kind of like this nasty color underneath. Like, definitely a polypore. And then we got this one. This weird shelf mushroom here. And this one's pored with large pores. So these are all going on my iNaturalist. I'm going to figure out what they are. So that's where you'll have to find out. This is definitely a sturrium. That's a crowded parchment for you. I love this one. Very beautiful. One of my favorites. Ugh, looks like a piece of candy corn. Here's why I don't visit this area very often. The beautiful invasive thorn thicket. The thorn thicket land. North slope here, and it is almost entirely barberry. Berberis thunbergii. And then you have the honeysuckle in there. The Lonicera japonica, that's the invasive one. I'm sure there's bittersweet. It's dreadful. You don't really, I mean, it's super rich. There's definitely plants scattered throughout here in the openings or along the trail, but that's it. Most of it's like, it's getting decimated. You got the invasive rubus here too. And, I mean, it's an old pastureland. We got burning bush. We got it all here. It's everything. Look, we even got, that's a spice bush there. That's good. We got a carpinus right here. So all this needs is some brush cutting, and it'd be better. Just like a couple passes through, you know? Clean it up a bit. Or burn it. Well, you can't burn it because it's on the north slope. It's dreadful. And this is a nature conservancy land. This is being, like, they conserve it, but they don't actively maintain it. Or they somewhat do, but just not as enough. Look at this. It's garbage. I hate hiking. Like, these areas prickly, and they're rather undiverse. But maybe I'm lying to myself. I haven't explored them very much because I just hate being in them because it's just prickly. Like, I would have to wear chaps walking through this. But you can sometimes, like, you know, maybe I'll hike in the area like this summer, and we'll find out how diverse it is. Big fat poison ivy, the Toxodendron radicans. Look at that thing. Poison ivy, all furry and fuzzy. Growing on this dead red oak. Or it's definitely dead. Has a few black birches trying to come up in this horrible invasive land. They did a clear cut somewhere, and I'm afraid that it's just going to be just like this, filled with mugwort or something like that. But I also don't know because I haven't gone that way yet, so we'll find out when I get there. Called Cerastium fontanum, or the common mouse-eared chickweed. I swear it used to be in Stellaria or something like that. So it's changed within the last 5 years, which is crazy. This is such a common little plant. It's a weed. Transition out of the lowland rich slopes, we start getting to the less rich uplands. Or upland slopes. The top of the hill is that way. So the ground cover, instead of being predominantly invasive barberry, it's now the native, but very aggressive and kind of shit plant, Smilax rotundifolia, or the round-leaved greenbrier. It's native. It's a good host plant. Feeds birds. At least it's native, but it does the same thing as barberry over there. And they're generally less diverse than lowlands. But also, I don't really hike in these types of areas because they're unappealing to hike through. So I don't know that for sure, so I have to do more hiking in these areas. We're in the maple oak briarlands. It's a forest comprised of red oak and red maple and thorny, thickety stuff. These used to be pasture lands. Here's that greenbrier, and then there's also berberis thunbergii up here too, the barberry. It occurs in patches, but you get just basically a somewhat more rich forest. So you might be able to find some stuff, but I also think these are kind of degraded and diverse, at least in plants, because there isn't a lot of diversity of plants. You know, it's mostly greenbrier, red maples, and red oaks. Maybe you get the occasional American beech or the white pine, but they're pretty boring compared to the lowlands, which has abundant herbaceous growth. whereas these really don't. This one's been affected by the beech leaf disease. You can see it doesn't have a whole lot of marcescence. Usually trees this size look a lot more like that one over there. Towards this view area, making way through the thorn thicket. You just kind of have to, when you're walking through, you just kind of have to step on them to get them out of your way, especially towards the thick areas. Wow, look at the red oak. Big one. Open grown with its 3 trunks. More competitively grown with all the different maples in here. So there's someone's house over there, but I wanted to see what kind of view I could get out of this pasture, so we'll see. We have sassafras albidifolium, or the sassafras, growing up on the border with this juniper in this abandoned pasture land. That is what this used to look like, because you can see the occasional dead cedars. Then right here we have a Norway maple. This will tolerate the deepest of shade and will eventually become a really tall tree. They can get over 100 feet tall. They grow fast and they seed readily, and they kill everything beneath them because they release some kind of toxin from their needles. So there's only a few different plant species that can survive in its deep shade. And if this thing continues, you know, maybe New England will be like a weird spruce forest. Where all of our invasives come from? You sure? Look at that, abandoned pasture lands. And where all the invasives come from in abandoned pasture lands? Residential housing with landscaping. There's your multiflora rose. In there we got Berberis Symbergii with the red berries. We got Lonicera japonica with that little green evergreen vine. But there is native in here, like this smilax. That's super common. You have the native red cedars, but it's a thorn thicket. They're never fun to walk through. Good girl. Squall running through. The massive cold front and storm that passed overnight dropped 2 or 3 inches, and so this is like the very, very tail end of it. It's a squall. You can see the end just beyond the hill. It opens back up. There's a nice little squall line, dropping some light to medium rain, kind of like a winter thunderstorm in a way. It's made up of cumulonimbus, but without the towering superstructure of the anvil to cause lightning and heavier rain. Lonicera japonica over here is blushed to this reddish pink color. It's fall foliage happening in early to mid-January, turning bright red. Cool. And you can still see there's some green ones over there. Cellar, little hideout. Probably where they stored stuff, or perhaps it was like an animal hide or a wine cellar, one of those things. But it's a little shelter. You could totally camp in here. Might be a little moist. Good stuff. And there's a little stone building right here too, and an old foundation. So perhaps this is definitely an old farmstead. Relatively recent, probably 50 years old. If that. Probably hasn't been lived in I don't know, a dozen years. Man, how cool would it be if you got a job and you got to live in this little shack and all you did was take care of the land and remove invasives? I would do that immediately. Look at this little place. A little shack with the windows. Cool stuff, and I got the tile floor. Cool stuff. Even has a little fireplace, ammo box, sticks. It's a roof over your head. Nice little spot. I'll totally live out here and just clear invasives all day. Ruscopolinum, or the shining sumac, growing out in this abandoned pastureland. It's a wonderful native tree. I absolutely love these. Bird food. And they're beautiful when they bloom. And they're beautiful in the fall. I take a couple seeds every time I see one, because they're great plants and I want them in my gardens. I love them. Area needs is yearly mowing. Maybe even every other year mowing. And it would be a beautiful native meadow. Or somewhat mostly native meadow. You still have a few invasive pasture grasses, but eventually if you mow it every year, you'll get the natives to take over. Right now it's going to be a young forest, which is disappointing, because meadows are so much better than young forest. This is Dianthus armyria, or the Deptford pink. It's a little caryophyllaceous plant. The little Dianthus. That's pretty much what it is. Ludwigia alternifolia, aka seed box, with those square seed capsules. It's a yellow flower in summer. So cool. You really only find them in wetlands or in open areas. On my way back, I'm in between the invasive land and the kind of rich lowlands where the hemlocks are. And I went up here because the clouds are nice and I got a little bit of a view from this. That's another opposite ridge. And then there's a further ridge. So this is the first ridge, or I'm on the first ridge. That's the second ridge, and that's the third ridge, and the final ridge, which has just kind of like a drop off to a kind of like a river valley, or just a deep brook. And then this is actually Ridge Hill, so the top of Ridge Hill is actually that way, but the top of Ridge Hill is more flattened, and the ridge is actually over on the southwest side. The clouds are nice, I gotta say. Now we're on a deeply shaded oak hickory slope, with the polytrichum, the Christmas fern, and various oaks. Very open, not too many invasives. A few spice bush, like this one. Actually, this one might be a hazelnut, or an Australia, or a carpinus. Until I see the leaves. It's probably a carpinus, because we have a few right there and there. That's the hornbeam. A mix of quartz and quartzite, and we got some mica flakes in there. So it's a quartzite ridge. That's cool. That's definitely the bedrock. Quartzite. Made it up to the second ridge, and the first one's over that way. And I'm gonna head over to that ridge now and skirt the top of it. We got a big creek down there, which is interesting because this one has like a small creek. It's a much wider ridge, whereas this one Like, it has a much bigger creek. So it's a longer one. You know, this is just like a bowl, whereas this is like a long ravine. Quartzite. Look at the Hedwigia and the red oaks and the kalmia. It's all kalmia down there. All those evergreen shrubs. It's probably 50, maybe 80 feet. Bet you columbine grows somewhere up here. Talus edge of the second ridge, made up of a lot of small stones. Rocky. Bet you there's some nice stuff that grows here. There's rock polypody right there. Polypodium virginianum on the north slope. Ah, this is neat. Goes all the way down like that. We'll probably go that way and head back up and then back down again. Oh, it's nice. There's the little squall that passed through. Against going to the top of the other ridge. Just decided not to. This area is colloquially known as the Great Swamp, but there's many great swamps throughout southern New England. I'm definitely going to explore in there. I think it's mostly just a shrub swamp, but there might be some good stuff in there. Yeah, check the islands.